Welcome to Designed for Connection, where we talk about the truth of science, psychology, and faith to help you flourish in your relationships. This is the fourth video in a four-part series covering shame. Now, as I have been kind of thinking about all of these videos for shame, I have a whole lot more information. So I'm sure I will do more videos, but I wanted to get to what the antidote to shame is. Now, Brene Brown talks about this. Kurt Thompson talks about this in his book, The Soul of Shame. So none of this is new under the sun, but it might be a little new and different in the way that I present it. So first of all, we have to know our triggers. What causes our unique shame antidote, or not antidote, excuse me, shame attendant to kick in? And it doesn't take much, right? So what triggers us to be vulnerable to that shame attendant showing up and speaking in our ear? And so recognizing our triggers, kind of learning what those are, recognizing how it feels in your body. You know, shame is really tied to a sensate experience. Oftentimes, heart rate goes up. We might feel flushed. We might feel, in defense mode. Most of the time we do, because that's the automatic thing that kicks in. Um, as soon as shame shows up, how do I defend myself? How do I protect myself from vulnerability of feeling this shame? And then we need to recognize it. We need to know our triggers, kind of these things to go hand in hand. And then the third and final thing that is really showing up vulnerable. Now, when you are feeling shame and you are feeling protective and defended, the last thing in the world that you want to do is show up vulnerable. So I do want to talk a little bit about the ins and outs of that, and I'll probably go over this more in detail in another video. But the gist of it is that most of the time, when we feel shame, because it's been with us for our entire life, my hunch is your shame attendant has been whispering in your ear since before you could even speak. When you were an infant and you were learning facial expressions and tone of voice. And if there was something in your parent or grandparent's voice that was not connecting, for whatever reason, probably didn't have anything to do with you. It was probably, they're having a bad day, or they're frustrated, or they're sleep deprived, all of these things. You're picking up on those tones of voice, that tone of voice. You're picking up on those facial expressions, and enters the shame attendant because it is there to destroy you and your relationships. So it's going to take every chance it gets to show up. And so, because this has been whispering in your ear for so long, most of us exile a part of us that feels that vulnerable place where we question, where we doubt, where we feel inadequate, where we feel unworthy, and those inner experiences we don't want to have anything to do with. So we have learned to exile them, either lying to ourselves that they even exist, that we even experience inadequacy or unworthiness, or we, in some emotional, neurological way, we dissociate from them. And so we wire those, those get wired away from our prefrontal cortex, the place. And a lot of time that's also because it happened pre-verbal. Our prefrontal cortex tells us it's the logical part of us. It's the part of us that's connected to words, to explanation, to logic. And so this shame gets wired in, or at least the experience of shame gets wired in, the shame attendant is our enemy. But the experience and the aftermath of that, where we feel, humiliation, embarrassment, unworthy, inadequate, all of these things, that is an experience that is part of our story in a fallen world, where we've then continue to feel disconnected. And it's a cycle that feeds itself, right? So if this part of us is dissociated, if we don't have access to our prefrontal cortex, then part of this antidote before we can show up vulnerable is learning to not only to recognize it, understand our triggers, but then also in the moment when it's showing up, we have to learn how to ground ourselves. We have to learn how to breathe, how to bring our prefrontal cortex back online. Now, there are tons of videos, and I'll try to link one or two in the section down below. That like the Crappy Childhood Fairy has some great videos out there on grounding, and I may get to some of them one day on my channel. But for now, I'll link to those because I think it would be really helpful. What are some specific ways that you can learn to ground? And there are things that we have to practice because when our prefrontal cortex goes offline, it's difficult to practice those in the moment if we haven't been practicing them when our prefrontal cortex is online. Okay, so I think this piece of learning how to ground, learning how to integrate dissociated or exiled parts of us is so vital to getting to that next step of being able to show up vulnerable with people that we trust and with a God that we are learning to trust, right? And so, I just think that this is a vital piece of the antidote to shame. And I will be posting more videos in detail about, um, the ways that shame shows up. I think that that's going to be important to help you recognize how it shows up for you. Um, what those triggers might be. There's some universal triggers and universal ways that this shows up that I think might be helpful. And then also those grounding, some grounding techniques that could be helpful. So we'll do a second part of this 4-part series to help go into more detail. All right, thanks for joining me. My intention and my hope is that these truths of neurobiology, science, of of psychology, things like that we are designed for connection, this way of attaching and needing relationships, both with God and with one another, is part of the way that we've been created, and being able to draw on the truth of faith and spirituality, because we are again designed to connect with God. And my hope is that all of this trifecta is going to help you flourish in the relationships that matter most to you.